What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to TTB Ravens Media, bringing you Ravens content every single day. And if you didn't know, this is going to be a Trust the Bank podcast recording. So if you're watching this first segment on YouTube, you can go check out the podcast, platforms wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, Anchor, wherever you listen to your podcast. That'll be out there because this is going to be our season prediction podcast. We will also be having a week one prediction podcast coming out. And I think, my hope is that we'll be able to get a week recap podcast out and a week preview podcast out each week. So there'll be two podcasts every week, one recapping the previous game, maybe towards at the beginning of the week, middle of the week, then, previewing the next game so that we can get, as much podcast content out as possible. And obviously doing the daily videos in between them and such. But, if you want to see our, offensive X factor, if you want to listen to the, our bold predictions for the overall season, go check out the podcast platforms, or they'll be out over the next couple of days. But Joshua, let's start off. Baltimore Ravens schedule. Benefit is they were the worst team in the AFC North last year. They get to play a lot of poor teams in the AFC. If you're looking at it as a whole, and, for people watching, what we'll do is we'll say kind of the number, then we'll go through, the biggest games, what are the must wins, what are the difficult ones, that type of thing. So don't worry, we will talk about all the games. But overall, when you're looking at this Ravens schedule, 17-game season, what are you thinking is going to be their record at the end of the year?
It's so tough. It's so tough because you don't want to be biased. At the same time, yes, I wouldn't say have a weak schedule. Because, if you look at it, we got some pretty good teams that we're going to be playing against. But honestly, if I had to go and make a record prediction with 17 now games, I'm saying 13-4. 13-4. I see us actually. I actually see us splitting those games between the Bengals and the Steelers. Just because that's an AFC North rivalry game. I feel like the game against the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos got a new sheriff in town and Russell Wilson. And when you got a new sheriff in town, also with some deputies like Sutton, KJ Hamler, Jared Judy. Javonte Williams, and they got a pretty decent defense over there too. They're going to come out and play. We've been saying this the whole offseason. The strength and the power has shifted all the way over to the AFC conference. Yes, the Bills will be. I'm not going to say the Bills will be slight work or anything of that nature. Never will take anything away from Josh Allen, Von Miller, Stephon Diggs. Those guys will definitely be prepared. But I feel like we do have their number in the regular season. So when you look at it and think about it, I feel like, the Steelers will be a team that we'll see in the playoffs. The Denver Broncos will, be a rejuvenated team that we possibly see in the playoffs. So, I can see us going 13-4, 14-3, battling out against some of those AFC teams.
Yeah, I look at this schedule and my initial thought is 13-4. And then I think about it and I'm like, okay, but there's a lot of tough games, 12-5. And then I think about it and I'm like, wait a minute. This is Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson thrives in tough games. Yeah. So then I bump it right back up to 13-4 because when I look at it, Lamar Jackson, when you can look at last year and be like, oh, but they were 8-3 last year when he went out. Yes, but that was with a terrible roster, and they were 8-3, and they defeated the Chiefs. This was the beginning of the year Chiefs, and the Chiefs ended up being very, very good. Yeah. And obviously they have some tough matchups in the division. Bengals, Steelers, those are always going to be tough. But I look at the other opponents that they have to play, and, Buffalo, very good team, difficult to beat. Tampa Bay, I'll say, very difficult team to beat. And then I think those are kind of the two big ones, right? Okay. Then there's other teams where it's like they're good. They can be difficult. I'm not expecting a blowout because Lamar Jackson, when he has a good roster around him, he blows teams out. Like, that's what he does. 2019 Ravens was just, they won by 20 again because they just beat worse teams than them because they have the personnel to do it. Teams like the Patriots could be a little bit tough. The Saints could be tough. Oh, I forgot to add in Denver's going to be really difficult to beat if they're healthy. Week 13, it looks like they play them. But right there, there's 5 teams, 5 games outside of the division, and I'll throw in, that's 9 games that are difficult. Mm-hmm. If you throw in all the Steelers and all the Bengals games. You can maybe say the Deshaun Watson Browns because that they play the Browns week 15. But I'm not going to say them because I think they're kind of iffy. 9 games. Lamar Jackson should win 5 of those games, right? Like, they should at least split with the Steelers. They should split with the Bengals. And then it's like, oh, they should, Lamar Jackson beat the Patriots when they had Tom Brady. And they played the Patriots in, 2021. That game doesn't count because it was in a monsoon. You can't judge the Ravens against the Patriots by saying, oh, but they lost to Cam Newton. Yeah, in a monsoon. Okay. Nobody could throw the football. Bill Belichick thrives in those situations. So it's like, I was given leeway there. So it's like, they should be able to beat those teams. Obviously they're going to be difficult games. They can be close games. But you look at the 2019 Ravens, why do I keep going back to them? Because that's the offense that we're going to be running. We've got the 3 tight end sets back. We've got a good offensive line back. We've got playmakers on the defensive side of the ball. It's much more similar to 2019 than it is any of the other rosters that we've had. Oh, and we have better wide receivers. So you look at that team and you look at the Ravens and you're like, wow. When they played in 2019, who did they beat? The San Francisco 49ers. Where did they go that year? The Super Bowl. They beat the New England Patriots with Tom Brady when they were undefeated. They went out and they beat, I believe they beat the Buffalo Bills that season as well. And I know Josh Allen, was not the same player that he is now. They didn't have Stephon Diggs and things like that. But it was like they were beating teams that were playoff caliber teams and playoff teams and contenders. And Lamar Jackson was beating them. And they were close games. I know the Patriots game didn't end up close, but that was a really close game until I believe it was Julian Edelman fumbled the football, and I think Marlon took that one to the house. But that 49ers game was a really tough game. That Seattle Seahawks game, early in the year, Seattle Seahawks, they were a threat.
Oh, yeah. Was it raining that game too?
It was, yeah. Lamar Jackson had to switch his cleats out because I think the field was wet. I don't know how much it was raining, but it was definitely wet. And that was I think they were a 1-loss Seattle Seahawks team. Maybe it was 5-1 at that point. And it was nobody was expecting the Ravens to win these games. But Lamar Jackson just kept on winning. He can beat those really good teams, especially in the regular season. And you may say, oh, but they can't win the playoffs. One, Lamar Jackson, that's not been the problem. Lamar Jackson's played well in the playoffs. The Ravens, Greg Roman hasn't coached very well, but they can beat these really good teams. I think a lot of people look at these rosters and they're like, or these schedules, and they say, well, that's a loss, that's a loss, that's a loss. And they give every difficult game a loss. And you're like, wait a minute. Lamar Jackson doesn't just lose every difficult game that he's ever played in. The biggest game of his career was a primetime game. I believe it was Thursday Night Football. It may have been Sunday night or Monday night game against the Chargers in his rookie season. That was the biggest game of his career because that was the one, you're a rookie. You're trying to take this team to the playoffs. You took over. You've lost to the Chiefs. This is a really tough game. This is the leader. This is one of the best teams in the NFL. This was the team that won that division that year. I want to say they ended up winning 13 games. It may have been 12 games in a 16-game season. That Chargers team was unbelievable. Goes out there in primetime, and he beats them. He wins these big games, routinely in his entire career. Last year, everyone was like, oh, Lamar Jackson versus Patrick Mahomes. He won. And he didn't have Ronnie Stanley. He didn't have Marcus Peters. He didn't have any running backs. And he wins them. So you can't just look at every difficult game because, granted, the Ravens have difficult games. And you can't just say, oh, they're going to lose them all. They should win at least half of the difficult games. And I say there's 9, maybe 10 of them. And if you say they lose half and you give the Browns, with Deshaun Watson's difficult game, that's 5 losses on the year. That's 12-5.
I mean, honestly, me personally, I can't even count Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson hasn't played in 2 years, in there 2 years. And even the time he has been practicing, he's been throwing interceptions. So, I mean, we can count the Browns out. I'm not saying it's going to be easy wins, but we can count the Browns out. And Jacoby Brissett is not going to do any better. He's really not. So I mean, I love that take, man. And to be honest, people, if you all been real Ravens fan, if y'all really been, with the team and understand the quarterback play, especially in the Lamar Jackson era, that 2019 season was magic because no one can stop that locomotive of an offense. We was high powered, we had a strong running game, and Lamar was just a dynamic player, and it took the whole NFL by storm because no one had a way to stop it. That was the same. You know what? It almost reminds me of when Ernie Davis started playing running back for the University of Syracuse. When Ernie Davis started playing running back, I believe it's Jim Schwartz was the coach way back then. I had to look it up. Big my college football fans, y'all help me out in the chat. In the comments, help me out. I believe it was Jim Schwartz, but Jim Schwartz brought a new style of offense that made Ernie Davis so successful. And I mean, he already was a dynamic running back, but once he got the ball in his hands and he also played both ways, he couldn't be stopped. He was so damn good. He got them to either the Cotton Bowl or the Sugar Bowl, and they played against Texas. So I mean, I'm just saying, when you get generational players, you put them in great position. You put them in great positions in order for them to succeed. And people may say, "Well, hey, McConnell, Joshua, you guys talk about Gregory Roman all the time. Gregory Roman put Lamar Jackson in the best way to succeed." No, Gregory Roman has now found another dual threat quarterback that he can use that can help make his offensive scheme seem like the best thing known to man. If you actually watch Lamar Jackson's whole football career in Louisville, he actually ran a pro set style offense. So just to say that Gregory Roman is making this young man, you can't say that. Lamar Jackson make this offense, and it helps Gregory Roman and Jonathan Harbaugh keep their job here in Baltimore. So when you say we had a depleted type of team and we was 8-3. Think about who was at the helm of that depleted team before the ship sank. Lamar Jackson. When you have a generational player is going to make anything happen. We didn't watch the era of Kobe. And guys that are real basketball fans has watched the era of Michael Jordan. And now, if you're a LeBron James fan, he then took some team. They all these three men have taken teams and made them to dynasties and won championships and gained many accolades. And Lamar Jackson, he's came back healthy. He's adding 20 pounds of muscle. I know people saying, "Oh, well, he's going to slow down." You can't teach speed. Just because a man put on muscle, you can't teach speed. And he's going to and he's looking, and I promise you, he's going to be more precise with his and accurate with his throwing. And he has the chemistry with the James Prochet, the Rashad Bateman. We already know him and Mark Andrews are like this, already in sync. Now you adding a 4th round rookie to the mix, a tight end that can also be a wide receiver. Man, stop it. So let's be real. We can actually go back to the playoffs and we can be dominant. The only thing is, it comes down to the play calling and what Ravens show up in the playoffs. We know we can be, champions during the season. I had friends that call us season champs. I don't know about y'all, Ravens flock, TTB family, but I'm tired of just being called season champs. I think Lamar Jackson and the rest of the guys are tired of being called season champs too. They know what's at stake and they know what's at the helm. And right now, Lamar Jackson is betting on himself, so he know he has to come out and deliver, or he doesn't get the money that he deserves.
Yeah, I think we're definitely going to see, and I fully expect the Rams to be, a dominant force in not just the AFC North, but the entire NFL season.